Hi everyone, welcome to the ServiceNow guide. Today I'm going to be going over a 101 overview of email notifications, discussing the most important details to get you ready to either ace your certified system administrator exam or just as a needed refresh. So the way that we're going to be doing this is actually, while we explain everything, we're going to go over an advanced example of how to implement an event-based notification. This example we'll be using is when a user wants to play Doom instead of doing their work, we want to notify their manager. So how that looks like is, let's go ahead and jump into an SC task. And what you'll see here is I've already implemented in the form view a UI action that allows users to play Doom. So as I click through here, you'll see that I'm actually able to play some Doom. Not kidding. So, while this is all fun and games, maybe the manager should know that. So what we're going to do is we are going to implement a system that tells the user's manager, hey, you do know that they are playing Doom, right? And so let's go ahead and get started, and I'll show you how to go ahead and get that done. So before we get into any of the high mechanics of this, what I want to do first is I want to go ahead and jump into notifications and start dissecting what a notification is and how we can use them. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go over, type in notification, and we'll look under system notification, and below here we have notifications. Now in this video, we are primarily going to be focusing on email notifications. There are other types of notifications. However, for the purpose of this, we're really just going to jump into that piece of notification. There are other ways to notify people. Those are either push notifications, which are notifications sent over to the application, and there are SMS notifications. However, here today, we are strictly focusing on email notifications. So what we're going to do is once we type in notification and we have system notifications drop down, we're going to select under that email drop down notifications here, and we will select new. Upon selecting new, this is the first thing we're going to see on our notification new record. You're going to see a table that this notification exists on, a category, as well as a name for the notification. So you'll also see some other pieces, and these pieces aren't as important. This is more advanced and a little less necessary, and that's allow digest, for example. And just so you know, allow digest, when allow digest is enabled on a notification, ServiceNow can combine multiple similar notification triggers into one email. This uses a notification digest job, and instead of the recipient, for example, getting 10 separate emails, they'll get one email containing the digest of all 10 emails. And again, this isn't something we're going to go over very much. It's just more, have that in the back of your pocket, something you should know is there. But moving forward, what we have currently is a blank notification, and a blank notification isn't really helpful. So we'll want to fill that in with some important information for this notification. So we'll want to name it something, recognizable. In case somebody has to edit this in the future, we want to know, all right, maybe we should name it after the verb. And that is kind of a common occurrence, as you've seen in my last tutorial. Naming things after the verb just generally helps. So what did someone do? Someone played Doom. Alrighty, which table did this occur on? This occurred on that SC task table. And then finally, we have a category piece. Category piece is strictly for you to be able to categorize your notifications and in case you need to do any sort of administrative work later on. So if you jump into here and click on category, you'll see that there is a wide variety already of notification categories. You can create a new one. I've already created one called Doom related incidents. If you wanted to, though, create a new one, I'll show you how to do that. So you'll click new, and then you'll just simply provide a name and a short description for that category. So as I had previously, my Doom related incidents, I'll go ahead and click that. And this is great. So what we have now is kind of the framework for our notification. We have a name of it, we have the table that it occurs on, as well as we have a category. Now, this is really important. When do we want to send this email? We have a couple of different options. We have send when, record inserted or updated, and that's why it asked us the table. Because if we had if we selected, for example, updated, and our source table was catalog task, SC task, and we had no conditions, essentially anytime somebody updated any record on SC task, we would have this notification trigger. However, we don't necessarily want to do that at the moment, so I'll go ahead and unclick this. Inserted essentially means when you create a new record on this table. And so once again, if I had, inserted selected and I created a new record on the catalog task table, then it would send it unless there are additional conditions. And these conditions can be in the form of active is true, for example, and actual start before today. So this would say, if I created a new record and it's an active record and it started before today, then I would want somebody to receive a notification for this. And you can play with these conditions as much as you want. However, there are also more ways to send notifications. When you click on this drop down for send when, you'll see that there is a triggered. And triggered could be in the case of a flow, or a workflow triggering this email via one of the spokes inside of the workflow, or there is also when event is fired. Now, what is an event? An event is a registered item on ServiceNow, and you can see these in the event registry. In the event registry, you'll be able to see there are many different events, and you can register them. And what that essentially looks like is this. So you'll basically have an event and you can determine, okay, the name of the event is Doom was played. As well as you can provide the table. And all of this really after the event name is just optional data. So you can go ahead and express what it was fired by my UI action, or fired by my script include. And then you can also provide a description. And this description will be this event is to be queued whenever someone tries to play Doom. This will prompt a notification. And really, all you're doing is giving context here. All you needed to do for an event was name said event, and then the rest will be handled by the notification. So let's go ahead and submit that, and we've created a new event called Doom was played. And then once we go into event name, I can type in Doom was played. Perfect. And honestly, the spaces were probably fine. I would have just needed to refresh it, but great. So in our example so far, we have this email will send when the event is fired. Now let's take a moment to just move along and see what's on the next piece. We have who will receive the email. In who will receive the email, you have a bunch of different options for who can receive this email. And this is exactly what it sounds like. These are the recipients for the email you're going to send. So we have users, and this is a way that you can hard code individual users that you want to receive this. So one example is I have a list of users here, and in this list of users, we can say maybe we want Alejandra to always receive this email regardless of whether or not it pertains to her. Maybe she's an administrator on the project, or maybe she just wants to keep a tally on how many people play Doom. Maybe it's very important for her to receive this, so she can be hard coded into this as well. Maybe users. We don't want to send this to individual users. However, there are groups that should have the same kind of access, and you can do that similarly. So every time this runs, we'll always send this to a particular group. Maybe you want to move forward and take a look at other things. So there are users in groups in fields. So as you take a look at these, maybe there is an assigned to field. And in this assigned to field, you'll want to send them the email. Maybe I have an SC task assigned to me. However, if it's assigned to me and somebody played Doom on my SC task, I want to know about that. And then there are also event params, and these are something we'll jump into in just a little bit. We have event parm 1 and event parm 2, as well as exclude delegates. ServiceNow has a process called delegates, and that is in the case where I, for example, am not able to respond to something, I can provide ServiceNow with my own delegate, and that will be somebody that can action on certain records for me. Now, in this case, I can include delegates to receive my email on my behalf in case I'm busy. However, if this needs to go directly to somebody and it shouldn't go to a delegate, we can express that by selecting exclude delegates. Now, what we can go ahead and do is we can move on to what will it contain. This will be essentially what the email looks like. When you look at an email, you can see that there are pieces like include attachments. Now, include attachments, when this box is checked, any file attached to the record are automatically included in the outgoing email. If it's unchecked, then no attachments are sent. Omit watermark is, by default, ServiceNow stamps a hidden watermark into every outgoing email. This allows replies to be threaded back into the system, and if you omit the watermark, replies may not be tracked correctly. Push message only. Normally, notifications can be sent by email, SMS, or push. If you choose push message only, then ServiceNow will skip the email entirely and deliver just a push notification to the mobile app. Importance. This field sets the priority of the outgoing email. Leaving it as none just sends the email at normal priority. If you want to send this with another priority, choosing high will add headers to show, so it shows up as flagged, and choosing low will mark it as less important. From, this controls the from address on the email. If you leave it blank, the system's default address is used. However, if you enter an address, the recipient will see that as the sender. The reply to defines where the replies should go. By default, replies come back into ServiceNow and are logged on the record. If you enter a different address, replies will go to that mailbox instead. Push messages. This section allows you to configure which push templates are used for notification. Unlocking that field will allow you to select and edit which push channels or templates will be applied. Then below here, we have the subject. What should the subject of the email be? And then finally, message HTML. Inside of here, you will have the contents of the email. So if I wanted to say, Doom was played by, and then we'll include their name, we can certainly go ahead and do that. I will just say Doom was played. And I will then save this notification. And this is what it's going to look like so far. Nothing special. However, we have a decent amount of information. We have subject, Doom was played, and the body, Doom was played by. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the next portion, which is configuring the event to actually do something. So already in ServiceNow, I have a UI action, and the way I can access that UI action is by typing in here in the filter navigator UI action, and then going under system definitions and finding it here. I already have a UI action called play Doom instead. However, all this does right now is it just launches a glide modal that has Doom inside of it. But what I really want to happen is I want a notification to trigger when this is pressed. So I can go ahead and do that using Glide Ajax. So let me go ahead and get started with that by writing out the script and explaining everything going on while I do it. First, I'm going to set up a variable, GA equals new Glide Ajax, then Doom event API. And so what we have above here is opening the modal. But now that the modal is open, we need to call the server. And so that's why I created this Glide Ajax object and pointed it to my script include that we haven't made yet called Doom Event API. This is the server class, and that is really going to do all of the real work. It's going to load the user, it's going to tell us who the manager is, and it's going to fire the event. Now inside of this Glide API, or rather inside of this Glide Ajax that we have, I'm going to add another line, and that is GA.add param sys parm sysparm name, then comma, then q doom event. So let me just make sure I got that all written right. Okay, great. So every glide AJAX call needs to tell the server which function it runs. That's why I add a parameter called sysparm name and then set it's a q doom event. That maps to the method inside of my script include. So why it matters is without that piece, the server won't know which function to execute. So think of it kind of like calling a specific endpoint. So I'm looking to reach out to the Doom event API, and the specific endpoint that I'm reaching out to is that Q Doom event. So as well as optionally, we can add other pieces. Like, let me go ahead and add another bit just for you. What we can add is ga.getXML. XML answer function MSG, then an open bracket here, and let me make sure I got that all right. Nope, so let me remove one of those. Okay, perfect. And then g_form.add_info. Add info message. The message. Alrighty. So this is not as important. However, inside of this callback, I show a confirmation banner on the form. If the server returned a message, I display it, and if not, I fall back to Doom event queued. This gives instant feedback to the user. For example, my script include returns Q Doom email to manager of this person on success, or a helpful message if that manager is missing. So really, this piece you don't necessarily need. It is just fairly helpful for when we do have some debugging to do. Now let me quickly check on what we have missing here, or why we have an error. Alrighty, so just like this, it should be all good to go. And now we'll go ahead and get started on that script include. Let me just make sure. Alrighty, so we have the form button there. Everything is all good to go. So let's jump into the script include, which we will name Doom Event API. So that you wouldn't have to watch me code and debug and so on, I'm going to provide the code here. I'm going to full screen it, but as well as I'm also going to make it available once again on GitHub. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to go over all of this line by line, or as it makes sense, so to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and save this record. And as we mentioned in our UI action, we have calling a glide AJAX. And so if we jump into our script include, we have Doom Event API is the name here, which is what we have here, Doom Event API. The parameter that we added was Q Doom Event, and that is the name of the function. That is exactly how our UI action knows what to call. So basically we're saying, hey, when you click this button, run this particular function. And that's what we have down here. So as we go along, we have this line of code, which is var doom event API equals class.create. And that pretty much says, that pretty much defines a new script include class, and its name is Doom event API. And this needs to match what I call from my glide AJAX in the UI action. If we move forward to this line here, this line just tells ServiceNow that my class extends the abstract AJAX processor. This is way beyond, anything you need to know for the CSA. However, it's just good to know. That's the base class needed so the client-side code can call this script using a glide AJAX. From here below, we start defining our function. And in this piece of JavaScript, Basically, I create a glide record on the sysuser table, and I try to load the current logged in user by using gs.getUserID. If I can't load that user, then I return a message right away. Then I go ahead and jump down to this line, and this is where I store the user's display name, and I name that clicker name, and that's what I'll use as parm1 in the event. And just remember parm1 for just a moment, because parm1 is the first free text slot that you can pass to an event. And that's how we'll be able to dynamically change the user that clicks on Doom that plays it, as well as dynamically adjust who the manager is that's going to get sent this email. Then what we have down here is another slot. And here is where I look up my user's manager. In my instance, the manager is stored in a custom field called u_manager. I created this on the user field. And I use getValue to pull the sysid of the manager. And that's what I'll go ahead and use as my parm2. Parm2 is the second free text slot that you can use to pass to an event. And I'm using it to hold the manager's sysid. Then below here is where we have, a check, and that's if no manager is found, I stop here and I return a message saying that this user doesn't have a manager set. Then over here, what we have here is really probably the most important line. This is where I call gs.eventQueue to fire an event named Doom Played. However, we don't have an event named Doom Played. We have an event, and we can jump back into our registry. We have an event that we have called Doom Was Played. And so the parameters I pass in are the record, which is, so I have the queue, the event rather, and then U, which is the record that ties to the sysuser table, the clicker name, as parm1, and that's the person that clicked on the UI action, and then we have manager sysid, which is the manager of the clicker. And then finally, we have here a return, and that is basically, I send a message back to the client saying that we queued the email for the manager. And then everything after this just closes out the function, and this here, because the script include is called from the client, I mark it as public, returning true, and here it allows Glide Ajax to go ahead and access it. So in summary, we have, here's pretty much the pattern. Parm1 and Parm2 are just free slots that you can populate when firing an event. In my setup, Parm1 is the display name of the user who clicked Doom, and then Parm2 is the sysid of the manager. The event passes those parameters into the notification system. The notification can then use Parm1 in the subject or body for display, and Parm2 to decide who to send the email to. And that's how you really wire it all together. So I'm going to save this here, and then we're going to jump back into our notification. Notification. Oh, geez. Notification, and then we'll go over to email notifications, and then our most recently created email. Let's filter it by updated. Oh, geez, that's updated as true. So we will filter this by, okay, the updated on. So updated today, great. And so someone played Doom. So this is the one that we created here. So let's go ahead and jump into it. And I will deactivate this other one that I use for testing. Great. So we have the event, Doom was played. And so we don't really need to care about the other conditions, because when that button is clicked, then this will fire the event, and then this event will then trigger this email. Who will receive it? Well, we've already determined that Parm2 is going to be my manager. If I have a manager, then they will be receiving this email. And then another fun piece is that now you can actually access these details like parm1 and parm2 simply by adding this line of code. Or really just this line. Event.parm1, and then end that curly brace. And so you can see that it filled in this detail automatically. So let's go ahead and just test this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this record, the notification. And then I'm going to create a new user. And this user is going to be Doom guy. His name's Doom. Last name. And we are going to access his manager. So if we jump into manager, we'll say that Abel is his manager. So as I press save, I'm just going to make this a little easier on myself, and I'm going to get this guy all the permissions he needs. So I'm going to go into roles, and I'm just going to make him an admin. That way we don't have to play around with what permissions he needs to be able to access a particular table. So I'm going to save this record, and then I'm going to impersonate. Type in Doom last name. So that's Doom guy. We're going to impersonate him. Now we're going to jump into the SC task, and we're going to play some Doom. So as I click on this, I get to have a little bit of fun. And heck, you know, with this little piece, I even get to full screen it. I bet this is the coolest ServiceNow tutorial you've ever seen. Oh, you know what? I should probably go back to work before I get in trouble. I hope nobody caught that. Oh, what's this? Queued Doom email to the manager of Doom last name? Oh, no, that can't be okay. That can't be good. That's fine. That's fine. I'll just go ahead and check my email outbox. There's absolutely no way somebody actually got notified that What is this? Just now? Doom was played to my manager. They dynamically added my manager? That's really not good. All right, let me preview it. How bad can it be? Doom was played by... Oh, no. Oh, no. And there you have it. So we've created essentially a tutorial to allow users to be able to send dynamically an email to a dynamic recipient, as well as dynamically change the subject depending on, you know, different variables that we pass into that event queue. As a bonus for watching this, what I will also do is I will provide the UI pages that I had here, and that was Doom modal. So what we have here is it's a really awesome source because all of the code is just publicly available for Doom. A lot of people will host it. And so what you're able to do is really DOM hack Doom into just about anything. So if you use this code here, and I can provide that as well in GitHub, if you use this modal and then you call that modal in a UI action, you too can also play Doom on the job. So with that, thank you so much for joining. I hope you have an awesome day. Take care.